What's up, everybody? It's DH Thorne here. So I was writing this really important Facebook post talking about social media and the internet and how these things actually can affect your magic, mostly for the for not for the best, and ways that you can deal with it. And almost as if the internet gods were offended by what I was saying. There was some kind of a glitch that only seems to happen when I'm writing posts like this, and it completely deleted and devoured my post. So I got kind of mad for a minute, and instead of getting mad, I said, you know what, I'm going to fight back in the way that I know best. I'm going to make a video about this. All right, so I'm being a little funny here, but there is some seriousness to this. It's very important that you recognize that the internet and social media, there is a very spiritual connection between their usage, what they are, your magic, your spirituality. And some of it's positive, without any doubt. The ability to access other people's information and gnosis and understanding, the dissemination of occult materials, all of that is one of the most important things in my life. You know, what the internet was made for. Dissemination of information and improving communication amongst people. These are the beneficial side of the double-edged sword, but of course all technology is a double-edged sword, and the internet and social media in particular are the most deadly and dangerous side of it, besides of course tracking you and all of that, but that's all interwoven in that social media thing. So it's really important that I do this video with a handful of ideas that you can use to better your time, we'll say, to sort of detach from this monster and just have a better life. Now, the first thing you have to realize is that social media is not your friend. None of this is your friend. YouTube is not your friend. Facebook's not your friend. Twitter is certainly not your friend. None of these things are your friend. Instagram, Thought Hub, you know, all of this stuff, they're not your friends, okay? What social media is, especially big tech social media, is essentially what I would call an industrialized slaughterhouse in which the meat is made to be more tasty by tormenting you with slow motion torture and tenderization techniques. And they extract from you one drop at a time every bit of value and energy and resource that you can possibly provide. They scoop up your data, sell it to the highest bidder. They algorithmically control and manipulate your activities and your thoughts. They torment you mentally. Facebook is actually on record conducting tests to show that their algorithms can cause people to feel certain ways, to feel happiness or sadness based on what they feed you, using the algorithmic, you know, way that they can change your timeline, essentially. So all of this stuff is designed to control your mind. And most people with any sense already know this. This is not like some big breakthrough. I'm not revealing something to you, but a lot of you guys know this and still just kind of muddle through. Myself included. But I've spent the last month minimizing my time, which didn't work very well, I have to tell you, but minimizing the amount of stress I allow myself to feel with content creation. And it's been a way to cope, and I've got to do better. And I've come up with some things that will help me that I'm going to be instituting in the next couple of days or weeks, which I hope will help. And maybe I'll do a quick update to say whether or not it's really helping. But these are things that absolutely must be done, I think, for everybody. They're not things I looked up. They're just things I sort of figured out while I was sitting here going, well, what is it that really bothers me? So the first thing is you have to recognize that you are addicted. And this doesn't just include social media. This means this thing. This thing in particular is a devil, okay? It is not a nice little daemon that is confused for a demon. No, this is a real demon. This thing is a monster. I remember I got my first cell phone maybe 10 years ago or so, maybe not that long ago. I was like late to the party, and I thought it was weird that everybody was so addicted to them. Everybody was always looking at them. And now I am no different. I sit there and, you know, first thing I do when I wake up is I go on my phone. Last thing I do before I go to bed is look at my phone. I spend so much time, you know, wasted that could be used in creative pursuits, just looking at either my phone or the big phone, my computer, and fucking around with stuff that's really not benefiting me. It's really just ways to suck my attention and time and confuse me and upset me and stress me out. And so I am trying to distance myself. And I had to realize that, okay, that means I'm addicted. And I've come to the conclusion that point number one is, if you use social media at all, I don't care how badass you think you are. I don't care how independent you think your mind is. I don't care if you think you can stop anytime. If you use it at all, I'm here to tell you, you're already addicted. The very first time is all it takes. The internet is the most addictive thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I think that goes for everybody. It's more addictive than crack cocaine. It's more addictive than all of this stuff. It is absolutely undeniable that even a person who's resistant to addictive habits, just using it for a little while, making that first account and checking it a few times, everybody knows that looking for that little notification ticker at the top or whatever, you can't help. What is, if you make a comment, you got to check it religiously to see what people say to respond to it. It's utterly habit forming, and it's very quick in its ability to make a habit. So you're already addicted. If you're here watching me, you're already addicted. Okay. So the thing is, you probably can never stop being addicted now. So all you can do is manage that addiction and make it so it doesn't have control over you. That's the key. And so we're going to have to try to figure out ways to minimize this control over you, because short of just saying, fuck it, I'm going to be a second-class citizen and not use the internet anymore, because that's basically what you would become. You've got to find a way to manage it so that it can't do what it does to you. You've got to make it work for you instead of the other way around. So remember, this is not just a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is an industrial slaughterhouse. It's the most inhumane thing that exists in this world today. It is a literal concentration camp for your mind. I say that without hyperbole. It is a concentration camp for the mind, and it's got ovens. Okay, it really does. Now, the way that this thing works, they also get you with, they'll threaten you with deplatforming, knowing full well and hoping that you'll make an alternate account and join right back in if you get kicked off or banned temporarily or whatever. These things they know are hollow, unless you are a big creator like on YouTube, or you have a big social media presence where they will really deplatform you for real, in which case you can lose lots of money. And places like YouTube in particular, they don't give you any real way to fight back. If they decide that a video goes against their terms, you get to appeal it, and that appeal is processed within a few minutes, really, by a computer, probably not by a person. And it's usually not treated fairly, and they always stick with their decision, and they never tell you exactly what you did wrong. They'll just give you a vague reason, and so your appeal falls on deaf ears, because usually you don't even know what you're appealing. You know, like I had one recently, and people know about it, it's kind of funny, where it was a video where I was talking about my experiences over the year. And I think the video was flagged because somewhere in that video, I was talking about bloodletting and ritual, and it was done in a way that I thought was tasteful at the time. But apparently YouTube decided that it was promoting something, you know, promoting self-harm and stuff like that, which, you know, whatever, that's fair. But they didn't make specific what exactly it was that I had said, or even a timestamp in the video. They didn't even give me an option like, hey, you could re-upload this video, just cut out these minutes and it'll be fine. This is neither here nor there, except that there's other things that they will put that's even more vague. Things like hate speech, or something where what counts as hate speech is never really defined. So it's really whatever they feel like at the time. And if they don't like you, they can deplatform you over it just by finding, because you said a word that in your mind isn't hateful, but in some nebulous place is. So that they can use this to control a lot of people. Okay, we all know that this system is broken, and it's meant to be broken. It's skewed in favor of them. Okay, we're basically living, another way to think about this is, imagine living in, like, you know, the early industrial era, like in the 20s or the teens or something, where you have sweatshops and these companies can do whatever they want to you, and your only real option is to quit. But of course, quitting means you are a second-class citizen, because everything is like this. You either have to move out in the country and become a farmer, or you can't work in industrial life anymore. And that's kind of what they've done here. This is basically the same system. And until we have some way of regulating that, which I hate regulation, but sometimes it's necessary, I guess, for working conditions and whatnot, until we have a way of fixing that, which probably won't happen the way things are going, you're stuck with it. So you've got to find a way to deal with it and manage it. Notice, I would also point out that the long-term goal is to replace your analog freedom with the internet. That is to say, they want as much of your life shoehorned into the virtual space as possible, so that if they deplatform you or whatever, it can affect your real life. This is basically social credit, which is used in China in particular, and probably other places in the world. I haven't really researched it in a little while. I forget where, but definitely in China. And you say the wrong things on the internet and you can lose your job. You can lose your credit score. You can't buy a house. You can't buy a car. You can't buy food. That is the wet dream of all authoritarians everywhere. And so the powers that be really want to encourage everybody, not just the intelligent, not just the stupid. They want everybody hopelessly addicted to this system so that you can be fired over the littlest thing. I see this happening all the time. You have somebody make fun of the president on a live call, and half of the internet wants to get them fired from their job. Luckily, I guess they won't, because their father, if you don't know the story, I don't want to tell you, but their father owns the company, so that they're not going to get fired. That's that Let's Go Brandon prank call on Christmas that happened with Joe Biden. So they want you in such a way that they can pressure you to think, act, buy, sell, whatever, and use the internet to limit your freedom, because there's laws against limiting your freedom in the analog world that don't exist on the online world. You can't censor people the same way in the analog world. They can't stop you from printing a book and selling it. They can't stop you from those things. But what they can do is they can make it so that you can't use the internet to do any of that, which completely stifles your ability to have a voice, of course, because the internet has become the new telephone, the new public square. And so if you don't have access to it like everyone else does, you're a second-class citizen, and they know that. So this is why this is a very powerful tool that's used against you. Now, all of this screws with your spirituality, especially if you're like me and you're sensitive and things are going on in the world that you don't like. And right now, the whole world is so screwed up that you can't help but look at it all day long. It's really distressing. And so the only solution that I have found is to, number one, step back and realize that all of this is beyond most of your control. That's not to say you shouldn't be informed. It's not to say you shouldn't be activistic or speak out or do things to maybe make things better. What it means is you've got to recognize that this is like a hurricane that's a month away, right? And it is a hurricane, and there's nothing you can do about it. The only thing you can do about it is to do something for yourself. You can board up the windows, you can stockpile food, you can do things like that. You can warn your friends and family so that they're prepared. You can tell the mayor to be ready with the dams and emergency services, but you can't stop the storm from coming, okay? And that's how a lot of us feel right now. We're looking at the world going, man, even with magic, I can only do so much. I can only control my own life, really. And this really kind of sucks. I can't make all these insane authoritarians go away. I can't make the vaccine mandate people stop being crazy. I can't make the Karens with the mask police shit stop. I can't make people see reason when it comes to all of this and say, hey, I should take some medical precautions, but it doesn't mean I have to be a Nazi about it. There is no nuance because everyone's gone completely insane. And there's not much you can do about it, right? The only thing you can do is isolate and go into your own sanctuary. And unfortunately, the internet is like a way for them to invade your sanctuary, right? So point number one, recognize it's addictive. Point number two, recognize that it's a way to get under the cracks and through the armor of your sanctuary and your personal space. It's a way for them to infect your personal space with what they want you to think, even though you may have otherwise closed everything off, right? You may have otherwise distanced yourself from everything, but the moment you pick up that phone, I know I pick up my phone and I turn it on, and especially if I just open up my web browser, the very first thing I see is going to be news, whether I want to see it or not. And that news often has stuff in there that I don't want to know about, and I can't turn that off. It's just built into the app. It's all built in. All of this stuff is built in just to make sure that if you even use this to check the fucking weather, if I go to my weather app, there's news about COVID and shit just pumped in there, just making sure it's in there that you have to see it. Okay, so it's really difficult, short of just cutting it all off. It's really difficult not to let it get to you, right? So we got to minimize and manage that. So we get to point 2. The first and most important thing, in my opinion, that I'm going to be doing from here on. If you're like me, you probably use your phone as an alarm clock, which means, well, you do this for a couple reasons. You put your phone by your bedstand. It's a very convenient alarm. It also means if you get a phone call or a message, you might wake up and catch it, especially if it's an emergency. So it's there. It's like having a phone by your bed back in the 80s or 90s. Everyone knows, with the little curly cord, or if it's wireless and the whatever. A lot of people would have a phone in their room, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a telephone in your room, but a cell phone is a different animal completely. And we put it by our bedstand the same way we'd put an old school phone because it's convenient, right? It's a good place to put your alarm clock. It's a good place to put your phone, and you can look at the time. You can pick it up and check the weather, all that stuff. But the problem is, if you're like me, when you first wake up, it's not just an alarm clock. You pick it up, and it becomes your morning paper too. And you see the updates, you see your messages, you see your notifications. And the first thing you do is you get hooked right into that dopamine immediately. That's a dopamine hit right away. And if that is also filled with stressful shit, like mine is, because so much of my career is based online and there's a lot of drama going on and politics is always bugging me and all this other stuff, this is a real problem for me. So the first thing I see is all this stuff that just gets me triggered first thing in the morning. I can't say it any other way. It triggers me first thing. And so I'm stressed out immediately. Now, stress, as annoying as it is, it's also addictive. Stress is an addictive drug. Okay, there's something about it that's very addictive because stress indicates a problem, and your natural impulse is to solve that problem. Okay, you, as a hunter-gatherer species, when you wake up and the fire's out, you got to start it. And so in your soul, your consciousness says the fire went out, or everything's on fire. I got to put it out. So you're not going to let that go until the problem's solved. But these problems that this thing's showing you can't be solved that way. The haters on social media, you can't solve them. You can just block them. The problems in the world, you can't solve them. You can just tune it out, but you can't because they make sure you see it. You see where I'm getting at with this? They give you a dopamine hit and a stress hit first thing in the morning. This is incredibly addictive. And I mean, even if you're someone who just goes and plays Candy Crush first thing in the morning, that too is horribly toxic because it builds up this habit where your phone becomes part of your morning routine, and routines are a big part of how they get you. So it becomes part of your morning routine. You get up, first thing you do, you grab that phone and you get locked right into this little 4x2 screen. Your whole world is here, right here. This is the world, motherfucker. This ain't the world. So you get hooked into that first thing in the morning. That has a huge, huge impact on the rest of your day, on your stress levels, on your happiness levels, on your ability to relate to people even. Your ability to just go, hey, there's a real world out there. If you didn't pick up that phone first thing in the morning, you would go out and socialize directly instead. Now, I know this because when I've got my day job going, I wake up in the morning, I don't have time to use the phone much. I'll wake up, I'll look at it for a minute, I'll go to the bathroom, and I'll jump up and go to work. So it's very limited how much I can use it first thing in the morning. And so that little hit is much weaker. But when I don't have work, I'll wake up and I'll spend a half hour, maybe even an hour laying in bed, just watching YouTube videos, scrolling, just being a sack of shit. And it sucks. Now, you're probably not like that because you probably got a normal life, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate to what I'm saying. So how do you fix this? Well, I use the phone for a couple of things. One, when I go to sleep, I play ambient sounds of fire and beautiful snowstorms going on and stuff. So it's really cozy in my bedroom at night, and I play it using a Bluetooth speaker. So you know what I got to do? I got to put this phone not in my bedroom, but out here in the living room. And I've got to replace my phone with an alarm clock. Now, the reason why this will help is this way I can still have my audio that helps me sleep, the white noise that I like. And if I get a phone call, I'll still hear the phone call. I can still jump up and run out here and grab the phone call. Maybe somebody in my family's dying or something and I need to get that phone call. Well, I can still jump up and answer the phone like I always could. I got to get up, but I can still do it. I can also use a regular alarm clock instead of this because the alarm clock, hey, guess what? It doesn't give me an excuse to pick up this phone first thing. If this is my alarm, I got to pick it up. I got to look for the button that says stop and I got to press it. And on that screen, of course, is notifications. Even if I have every single notification turned off, there's always something that sucks you in, always, because it's there, right? So putting the phone out here and using an alarm clock would really help. Okay, so stop using your phone first thing in the morning. That is, I don't know, tip number 3. Okay, tip number 3. Don't use the phone first thing in the morning under any circumstances. If you can, turn it completely off and put it in another room and get the phone calls and messages after you get up and go get it. I'm telling you right now that there's no emergency in the world that will be solved by you getting that phone call right away. Chances are, if it's a big enough emergency, someone else will handle it. And if you're the CEO of a big company, then hire somebody to deal with that for you so that you can be notified by a person, not by your phone. Don't let your phone do that. Get someone else. Get someone else who's already up or whose job it is to deal with notifying you of that stuff so that you can have some sort of a barrier between you and this fucking thing that sucks your soul. All right, number 4, the exact same thing, but at the other end of the day. At night, do not use your phone, right? Now, everybody says don't use your computer or phone before bed because it's bad for you. It doesn't help you sleep. I don't have that problem that much. I pretty much lights out when my head hits the pillow. I'm going to say 9 out of 10 days out of the week. Maybe even more than that. It's probably even better. It's more like it's more like 99 out of 100. I don't have problems sleeping, really. What I have problems is getting up. So I don't have insomnia. I have the opposite of that. I don't like getting up. So when I go to sleep, I usually go right out. That's usually not the problem. But if you like to read yourself to sleep, which is a good idea, don't use your phone, don't use a tablet, don't use a Kindle, use an analog book and a little nightlight. That is so much better for you for every one of the reasons that I said. Number 1, you don't get the blue light. That's a big deal, right? You don't have that blue light issue that fucks with your metabolism. But second of all, you don't have all of the stressful shit on the side that you want to look at. Even playing video games like Candy Crush on your phone before sleep. I think my wife does that a lot. Not always, but she does do it. You know, when you're looking at this stuff before bed, this gets your brain stimulated in the wrong ways, and it's another part of the addiction. The 2 most addictive times of the day, I believe, I'll have to do my research to double check, you can check this, is first thing in the morning and the last thing at night. Those are the 2 most addictive times of the day. When you first wake up and have to take that drink of the sauce or light up that crack pipe or whatever, or go to bed the same way, that's the worst. That's the most addictive times. That's when everything goes in, because whatever reason your brain is in a different brainwave state, and it's just more susceptible to these addictive things like dopamine. So that's important. Okay, let's keep that right on the front burner. So I guess number 5, I'm losing count here, is don't use your phone before bed. And this goes back into that last one where I said put your phone in the living room or somewhere else in the house and turn it off or whatever so that you don't use it as an alarm. Don't make it something that important to you. Use other things. Use more analog solutions. Use more old school solutions instead of using the phone. Okay. Okay. Now, the next one, which would really help me, it's more of a pipe dream solution, but some of you might have better access to it. I'm saying this one more as a way to think about it, and maybe because everybody's different. Nobody, managing your internet usage during the day, it's got to be a personal solution. And this is something that I think I'm going to do long term. It's something that I want to do, or something like it. I've got to realize that, if I sit quietly and just contemplate what would solve this problem for me, what would make the most easiest solution, but it might be painful, but what would really solve it for me? And I realized that as much as I hate the thought of living out in the boondocks in a cabin in the woods, off grid with no phone and none of this, I realized that, let's say I was living in a life where I just had some crappy internet like dial-up or something, where I couldn't have good Wi-Fi and I couldn't use my phone all over the house. And I could only use it for like emails and shit like that, like, really important stuff. If I lived somewhere like that and I had to drive a half hour or so to get to an internet cafe to have broadband again, sure, I wouldn't be able to play MMOs. Sure, I wouldn't be able to use YouTube and stream the way I do. Sure, a lot of that stuff would suck. However, interestingly enough, I wouldn't have this problem, right? So if I lived in a situation where I didn't have access to broadband internet all the time, and I could only use it by going out of my way, I could still use it. It's not like I wouldn't have access to it, but it wouldn't be on tap in my house. It would be a thing that I have to go out of my way to use, which would mean that it would be much more difficult to addict to it, and I would have to structure my usage of it. So that's something to think about. That's a way to, when you realize that it would structure it for you, well, maybe there's a way you could find to structure it for yourself. Maybe there's some way you could do that. Now, I've tinkered with apps on my phone, like time limiting like apps. They don't work for me. I'll just turn them off. I had this app on my phone for a while that said you can only use the internet for this much time during the day. And then it would sort of switch off, and you had an emergency code. And it was cool, but it was like self-defeating, because all I had to do was just, emergency code, I'm going to check Facebook, right? It was stupid. It was like when they put like an alarm on a refrigerator to, for people who overeat. It just turned the alarm off. Like you have to have the discipline to use it in the first place. And if you have the discipline to use it in the first place, you probably have the discipline not to do the thing in the first place, right? So it's kind of stupid. But think about that. Think about, ways that you can find to make this better. Maybe instead of having a turn off button for it, or living in the boondocks, I could take my own advice again. And instead of keeping this in my living room with me, I could go put this in the bedroom and leave it there. And now I've got to use my computer, which is still pretty addictive, but it's a little bit less convenient to check certain things. It's a little bit less useful. I'm not saying it's a solution, it's just an idea, okay? So all of these little things, because at the very least then I'm not as addicted to this version of it. And this fucker tracks you, this thing watches you, it listens to you, and all of the worst of it is through that. The computer is bad, but the computer has at least one caveat in that you have a lot more control over your computer than you do your phone, because they're less proprietary. There's less going on in your computer. I'm not saying there's nothing, but there's less going on in your computer that you don't have control over compared to your phone, especially a modern phone, where they hide all of these features 10 layers deep, and some of them you can't turn off, that track you and do all that stuff. I have things on there I can't get out of the system. I can't turn off Bixby and whatever else, and Siri and Alexa and all that on these tablets and phones. They're built in, they're integrated, and you can't turn them off. You can turn them off, but they're never really off. They just don't have the function that you want. They're still listening to you. They're still doing all the things that they were doing before. They just don't respond to you, right? That's the thing you got to realize. So how does this all affect you spiritually? Okay, so this is a spiritual channel, so why am I talking about stuff that's not spiritual? If you can't see how this affects you spiritually, it's already got you by the balls, or the ovaries, or whatever it is you've got. This thing completely destroys your ability and desire to enter the astral, the spiritual, the contemplative world. That's not to say that there aren't pros to this. I've told you before, this has enabled better access for all of us for spiritual and metaphysical information. So there is that. And of course, you get to talk to people like me and people who know more than I'll ever know that are useful to you. And we can talk to each other, and I can learn from you and you can learn from me. That's all a pro to this. That's all part of the sword that's good for us. It protects us. It helps us. It teaches us. But the cons add up. And if you don't mitigate those cons, then it becomes more of a thing against you, right? So this system, this device, this internet, if I was a Gnostic, I would say that the internet as it currently is being taken over by the demiurge. It is becoming another tool of enslavement for mankind. It's absolutely working very, very well. Because, that demiurge, whether you believe in it or not, symbolically, it always turns what is good for mankind into a tool of control. Because anything, like I said, any tool can be a weapon. Every hammer can be a club that you can kill people with. Every screwdriver can be used to stab, and those can be used to create even better weapons, right? So the internet is like that. Spiritually, the internet gets you through the psyche. It gets you in a way that it's really difficult to have a spiritual life. The people that are the most spiritual are often the ones that don't use this stuff hardly at all. And they just go out in the woods and they pray and meditate and do magic and stuff. How many of you would do that? How many of you would do that a lot more if you didn't have Facebook and Twitter and crap distracting you? Yes, you'd lose some inspiration, but think about it. Really think about it for a minute. Did we need that 20 years ago in the 80s and 90s when I first started encountering this stuff? Did I need Facebook and YouTube to learn how to do magic? Absolutely not. All the books existed, all the imagination existed, all of the fantasy fiction existed that helps inspire, all the mythology was there for the taking. You just had to go to the library. You didn't need this fucking thing. See what I'm getting at? These things distract and they distort. I'm not saying you can't use it. I'm saying you got to mitigate the cons. Because this is, like I said, an industrial slaughterhouse. It's not even a wolf in sheep's clothing. At least that has some honor to it. This is a cold, heartless machine that is designed to torment and extract from you every ounce of value and soul that you have. And if you don't learn to mitigate that, going forward into the future, you're going to be at its mercy. Anyway, guys, this is a 30-minute video, so I'm going to cut it here. I'm glad to be back. So, you know, I'll be doing more videos coming up. I'm going to be returning to a weekly schedule in January. So hopefully you guys will be catching my videos every week. I can't promise they'll always be about spirits and demons, but they'll be my deepest thoughts, and I hope that they're interesting to you. So I encourage you guys to make sure, if you're new here, to like, share, and subscribe this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you get those updates, because you got to get that dopamine hit. Everything I just said is getting, you know, I'm contradicting myself by encouraging you to follow me, but that's the only way my channel will grow. So I got to be at least a little selfish about it. Use your discretion, guys. Don't become addicted to me any more than you become addicted to anything else. But it does help out my channel a lot if you subscribe and watch my videos and comment on them and give them likes and stuff. And I sort of hope that this content is more beneficial. I hope this content is one of the pros of the internet, not one of the cons. So anyway, guys, until next time, this is DH Thorne signing off. Mind the fucking shadows, and yeah, fuck y'all. I'll see you soon. Bye.